So this is my third video on depression. One's called Depression, the other is Depression and Perception, and this is going to be Overcoming Depression. In the first video, I talked about the fact that I have been diagnosed with depression in the past, and I believe in the recovery model, which means you're never completely over health disorder. I think that's better. You're never completely over it, that you're always at risk to go back to it. So you have to take precautions and you have to find out what works and keep doing that. So today I'm going to talk about what works. The first thing that I think is really important in that realm and in that aspect is the idea that depression is a mental health disorder that affects thinking. Almost all mental health disorders affect thinking. So the first thing is, if I'm starting to get depressed, to recognize that that is diseased thinking from my disorder. It's not really reality. The disorder is coloring my perception and things aren't as bad as they seem. And to challenge that, to kind of step back from it. Cognitive behavioral therapy would say challenge it, and I think that's good. That's a great start. But I think in my approach and in some of the more recent approaches, the idea is to allow it and welcome it and realize that it's just an image, it's just a thought, it's not reality, and not give it so much weight or attention. Thoughts don't mean squat, and I say that all the time. I say that to my students. I say that to my clients. Thoughts are just thoughts. One of the writers that I've read, Dan Millman, says you're no more your thoughts than a freckle at the end of your nose. We all have varying thoughts throughout the day, or however long, that are ridiculous. They're absurd. They're they have no real basis in reality. They're just but yet at the same time we trust other thoughts, like we hold on to them as if they're gospel, and I think that's a mistake. Another aspect of overcoming depression, I think, and overcoming anything. I was with a client last night and I said these exact words, that you need to change your philosophy. One of the books on my shelf back there is called Plato, Not Prozac. It's an okay book. I'm not recommending it, but I love the title. I love the idea that there were these philosophers that said that this is the way to a happy life. In fact, I was looking at a video by one today, Hume, I think, and that you do these things to have a calmer, more serene, happier life. So I think a change in philosophy is needed. Some other things, I'm really into mindfulness and kind of creating a distance with your thoughts, not accepting them. I was reading an article recently, or a book recently, that called it Decentering, in ACT therapy, ACT. They call it defusing from your thoughts. So the idea is that your thoughts aren't, they're not, as I said earlier, they're not the reality. They're just thoughts. They're just images, and they're subject to distorted perception. And mindfulness can be really helpful with that. There's an acronym that I saw in a video, a course I took, called RAIN, R-A-I-N. R is recognize what's happening, like whatever feeling, sensation, or thought I'm experiencing, recognize it. A is accept it. I is investigate it, like how does this feel? What is this causing inside of me? And then N is non-identify, which is what I've been talking about. Like, my thoughts are not me. I'm a big advocate of exercise. I try to get most of my clients to exercise. The health benefits, the psychological benefits are well documented. And I've already done a video on exercise, so I would just refer you back to that. But try to make exercise a part of your life. It doesn't have to be a lot. I'm a big advocate of self-improvement. I'm constantly reading books to try to improve myself as a human. Like I say all the time, I want to be a better human. Like I'm trying to be more loving. I'm trying to be kinder. It's not in my nature. In a book I really love called Don't Be a Jerk, He says you can be the Buddha 1 minute and a jerk the next, and I totally agree with that. But I work at self improvement, trying to be the Buddha more often, trying to be a more loving, kind, compassionate person more often. Um, I think it's important when you're combating depression to have hobbies, things you really enjoy. There's a term in psychology called flow. I've used it in other videos, and I can't possibly say the guy's name that's responsible for that. But when you're caught in flow, when you get into the groove or into the zone, um, people that are able to do that with some regularity are happier. They're happier people. Psychology experiments have demonstrated that. And then treating yourself, I think that is important. I think we overdo that sometimes. Like we're like, I deserve this, and every day, every 3 times a day, you deserve something wonderful. But maybe that's a little much. But I think sometimes we do need to treat ourselves. We do need to take care of ourselves. And along with treating yourself, I think is savoring. There's so many good things that occur in a day. You choose some of the food you eat, and if you enjoy that food, if you stay with the feeling of enjoyment that you get from that food, that wires your brain to be happier. Brains are negative biased. We look survival kind of dictates that we look at the negative more than the positive. Negative gets a lot more weight than the positive. In fact, the psychology or philosophy video I was watching today said similarly that we're more shaped by our failures than by our successes, and I agree with that. I think that's evolution. I think that's hardwired into our brains. But we can balance it out a little bit. Like it's mostly negative, and it's 5 to 1, they say. So it takes 5 positives to equal 1 negative because we give so much weight in our brain to negatives. So the idea to balance that out is to really savor what we do enjoy. Stop and smell the roses. Enjoy that cup of coffee you're having, or cup of tea, or cookie. Whatever it might be. Really enjoy it. Like really savor it. And savoring will also help you cut down, at least when it comes to eating. Savoring has been found to reduce our caloric intake. At some point, the Dalai Lama said that if you want to be happy, help others. And I really do think that's some sage advice, that people that volunteer, people that help others, even in one of my favorite TED Talks, Shawn Achor talks about doing one conscious act of kindness a day. Just doing something nice for people makes you feel better. So I'm a big advocate of that. And then a friend of mine had written a book about resilience, and in it, and I wanted to cover this because I thought this was a brilliant analogy. He's a researcher, so he's all about numbers and studies and making a good study and trying to eliminate confounding variables. And he talks about how anytime we compare ourselves to other people, we're comparing apples to oranges. It's an apples and orange comparison. And he uses in the couple paragraphs that he talks about this in the book, he talks about how the confounding variables have to be eliminated as much as possible, and in real life they can't be eliminated. So if you're comparing yourself to me, you're comparing apples to oranges. You have different variables in your life than I have in my life. I can't compare myself to you. Another saying I like about that is we judge others by their highlight reel, and we judge ourselves by our behind the scenes. And I find that to be very true, that we should just stop comparing ourselves to others as much as we can. All right, that's it. If you watched, thanks for watching.